The astral shortcut that took a life. It was supposed to be a harmless adventure. A 7th-year Gryffindor student, obsessed with secret passages and maps, discovered a narrow hallway near the astronomy tower that didn't appear on any floor plan. What's more, he noticed the corridor flickered on and off on the Marauder's map, like a heartbeat. He believed it was a shortcut to Hogsmeade, hidden even from the creators of the map, cloak draped over his shoulders, and the map clutched in his hands. He followed it. He never returned. Professors scoured the castle. The Aurors were called in. All they found was his wand, snapped clean in half, resting near a stone statue of a weeping angel. The statue wasn't there before, and after that day, it was gone. Rumors spread like fire. Some say the corridor doesn't lead to Hogsmeade, but to another layer of the castle, one that only exists between seconds, a liminal space. Others believe he walked into a trap laid centuries ago, one designed to consume students too curious for their own good. The Marauder's map hasn't shown the hallway since, but every once in a while, a student spots it, just for a moment, flickering near the astronomy tower, like a pulse in the parchment. Some think it's calling someone to finish what that student started. Others believe it's a warning, not a trail. One brave 3rd year tried stepping into the hallway again. He came back seconds later, eyes wide, unable to speak for 3 days. What did he see? He only whispered one sentence. He's still walking. The fire that never went out. It began with an incantation whispered into the Gryffindor common room fireplace. Just a joke between friends. A 6th year had found the phrase in a forbidden book, one borrowed from the restricted section without permission. A fire charm meant to summon an ancestral flame. They didn't think it would work. But it did. The flames turned blue, silent. They stretched tall as the hearth and held that eerie shape for a full week. No water could douse them. No charm could contain them. Professor McGonagall herself stood before the fire and muttered something in Latin before quickly turning away, her face pale. During that week, odd things began to happen. Students grew forgetful. Dreams of their ancestors flickered across their minds. One girl sleepwalked into the common room and began speaking in a dead dialect. Another boy claimed to see someone sitting inside the flames, watching with glowing eyes. Eventually, the fire returned to normal, just as suddenly as it had changed. But the wall behind it bears a faint discoloration now, one that never scrubs clean, no matter how hard the house elves try. Some say the spell opened a small tear between the present and something much older. Others believe the flame was a remnant of Godric Gryffindor's own enchanted fire, drawn back into the world by accident. Now, students are warned not to speak near the fireplace after midnight. Not in jest, not in Latin, not at all. Because sometimes the flames flicker blue again. And when they do, the common room gets very quiet. The potion that Hogwarts banned. They were just fourth years, eager, bright, too confident for their own good. A group of Gryffindors, tired of waiting for sixth-year potions curriculum, decided to brew something advanced, something impressive. They found the recipe in an old handwritten tome tucked behind rows of dusty books in the library's back corner. The potion was called Vita Clavis, the key of life. It promised increased focus, better memory, and sharper reflexes. A dream for any student facing exams. They followed the recipe to the letter, except for one detail. One of them misread the name of a root and substituted a look-alike ingredient. The potion turned black. They drank it anyway. Within minutes, the symptoms began: slowed breathing, dulled eyesight, trembling hands. One collapsed, then another. The last tried to reach the door before seizing mid-step. By the time Madame Pumphrey arrived, it was too late. The professors destroyed the book. The potion's name was erased from every library record. Students were told it was a tragic illness, an unfortunate coincidence. But Gryffindors remember. They whisper that the potion worked too well, that it unlocked parts of the mind humans weren't meant to access, that the error wasn't the ingredient, but the timing, that the potion wasn't incomplete. It was waiting. Now, there's a section of the potions classroom where the stone is stained just slightly darker, where no one's cauldron ever sits quite flat. And once a year, on the same day, the smell of burnt sage fills the room. For just a moment. It's not taught anymore, but the recipe still exists. And someone always thinks they can get it right. The boy who dueled a ghost. He was known for his temper. A fifth-year Gryffindor with a wand always at the ready and a mouth that got him into trouble. He had a reputation for challenging students in the corridors, boasting loudly and dueling anyone who dared cross him. But one night, he picked the wrong opponent. He entered the trophy room after curfew, chasing what he thought was Peeves. Instead, he found a shimmering figure standing silently in front of the house cup cabinet, an old student in tattered robes, with a wand still clutched in ghostly fingers. The boy didn't hesitate. He challenged the ghost to a duel. Witnesses, few, but real, say he shouted a jinx before the ghost even turned. The spell passed through the apparition like mist, but the ghost responded, not with a wand, but with a scream. The sound shattered 2 windows, candles along the walls blew out, and the boy collapsed. He didn't speak for the rest of the year. Physically, he was fine. His magic returned, but his voice? Gone, silent, as if something had stolen the words from inside him. Some say the ghost was a former student who died in a duel. His spirit stuck in that moment forever. Others believe the trophy room houses more than memories, that certain relics absorb not just pride and victory, but vengeance. Now, students avoid the room after dark. And the boy? He never dueled again. He graduated quietly and declined to speak at his ceremony, though some say he mouthed something while passing the trophy cabinet. It looked like an apology. The hidden portrait that eats sound. Just down the hallway from the fat lady's portrait lies another, smaller painting, crooked, dusty, easily missed. It shows an elderly wizard sitting in a study, surrounded by books. Nothing unusual at first glance. But speak near it, and something strange happens. Your words disappear, not silenced, not muffled, just gone. A first year complained their roommate never listened. The next day, the roommate asked why they hadn't spoken in 2 days, though they had constantly. Another girl tried to cast a spell near it. Nothing happened. No incantation, no spark. Even more unsettling, students report forgetting what they were talking about entirely. Conversations vanish mid-sentence. Ideas slip through their minds like smoke. Eventually, a 7th year conducted a test. He stood near the portrait with a dictaquil recording everything. When he played it back, there were gaps, not silence, blank tape, no trace that sound had ever occurred. Some believe the portrait is cursed, painted with enchanted silence. Others think the man depicted was a researcher who wanted quiet so badly he siphoned sound into the canvas itself. There's even a theory that he devoured voices, feeding on them to prolong his painted existence. Every now and then, the man's expression changes. His eyes seem sharper, his mouth slightly open, like he's listening. Now, students know better than to linger near it, especially if they're telling secrets, because once the portrait hears you, you may never hear yourself again. The Forbidden Forest dare gone wrong. Gryffindors are famous for their bravery, and sometimes that bravery teeters too close to recklessness. Years ago, during a particularly warm autumn, a group of second years dared one of their own to spend the night in the forbidden forest, alone. He laughed, took the challenge, and left just after sunset, promising to return by breakfast. He never did. They searched in groups. Professors scoured the forest edge. Even Hagrid joined the hunt, bringing Fang and a lantern that cut the fog like a knife. All they ever found were the students' shoes, sitting neatly side by side near a patch of earth that pulsed faintly with warmth. No footprints, no blood, just the shoes, still warm. The boy's name was removed from class rolls. The forest remained forbidden. But every year, during that same week, Gryffindor students report hearing footsteps near the edge of the forest. Some say they see a pair of shoes walking by themselves, pacing as if waiting for someone to return. One girl swore she saw a boy standing just inside the tree line, barefoot, waving. She blinked, and he was gone. Some believe the student was taken by centaurs or devoured by some creature that left no trace. Others think the forest itself claimed him, that there's a price for foolish bravery, and it comes in the form of silence. Now, older students warn the first years. You can be brave. You can be daring. But never, ever be both alone in the dark. The Wandless Wonder. She was a 6th year when it happened. Gryffindor through and through. Bold, fierce, and often frustrated with how long spells took. Her wand, though reliable, never quite felt like it fit her. One day, during a heated duel in defense against the dark arts, her wand was flung across the room. She stood there, furious, hands clenched at her sides. And then something strange happened. The spell still cast. Her opponent flew backward, hit with a forceful Expelliarmus that no one heard spoken aloud. Everyone froze. The professor tried to explain it away. Raw magic. Accidental wandless casting. But the student insisted she'd meant to do it. From that day forward, she stopped using her wand entirely. She cast everything without it. Charms, hexes, even transfigurations. But only when she whispered. Her lips barely moved. Her eyes would narrow, and the magic would obey. At first, students were amazed, then wary. Her power grew sharper, stranger. Lights dimmed when she walked into rooms. The fat lady once refused to let her in, muttering, "You're not quite here anymore, are you?" Eventually, the girl withdrew, not from classes, but from people. She claimed she heard spells speaking to her, that wands were only ever a distraction. She graduated top of her class, but she didn't keep in touch. Her name was listed in the Prophet once. Years later, mentioned in connection with an unsolvable magical event. No details, just her name and a whisper. Now, students sometimes try it themselves. Throw their wands aside, whisper, "Wait." But nothing happens, because whatever answered her that day was listening for her alone. The Tower, Shadow That Isn't Yours. The Gryffindor dormitory tower is full of windows, arched and ancient, offering sweeping views of the grounds. During the day, the sunlight spills in beautifully, but at night, those windows cast long, spindly shadows, and sometimes those shadows move differently. It usually begins around third year. A student wakes in the middle of the night, the moonlight pale on the stone floor, and sees their shadow standing beside them, motionless, except when it isn't. One girl reported seeing her shadow move to the window while she remained frozen in bed. Another boy saw his silhouette wave while his own hands were still. A first year screamed when his shadow lingered several seconds behind his actual steps. No one ever sees it during the day, but the moment the room darkens, it's back, watching, delayed. A few students tried to test it, casting lumos to track their own movements. One managed to sketch the shape that appeared behind him, longer than it should have been. Leaner, head tilted. Not his. The portraits in the common room won't speak of it. The fat lady refuses to let it be discussed near her frame. And once, when someone tried to ask nearly headless Nick, he simply shook his head and floated through the wall. Some say it's a remnant of a student who disappeared long ago, his shadow still walking the dormitory, trying to remember how to be human. Others believe it's something older than the house itself, something that wakes when courage turns into fear. Now, students don't look too long at their own reflections after lights out, because when you stare into your shadow, it might blink first. The sword that still chooses. The sword of Gryffindor. The relic. The legend. The blade that appears only in moments of true bravery. Officially, it was returned to the headmaster's office, encased in crystal, safe and unreachable. Unofficially, Gryffindors say otherwise. There are whispers of first years finding a blade tucked beneath their pillow after a night of terrifying dreams. A fifth year once claimed it appeared in his trunk after he defended a Hufflepuff from a cursed prank. He blinked, and it vanished. One girl said she reached under her bed for her wand and touched cold metal instead. When she pulled it out, it wasn't the sword, but something that shimmered like it, pulsing faintly with red light. The professors, of course, deny it all. They say the sword is secured, protected, but students know that Hogwarts has a will of its own, and Gryffindor's relic, forged from goblin silver and tempered in dragon blood, was never meant to sit behind glass. It wants to be used. The common theory: the sword has fragments, shadows, echoes of itself that manifest when a Gryffindor faces fear without backup. They don't last. They don't cut. But they remind you of who you are, of what you might become. Some students even leave out offerings: scarlet ribbons, lion figurines, notes written in shaky ink, just in case the sword is watching, just in case it chooses them. The secret staircase that loops forever. There's a narrow staircase behind a portrait near the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. Most students pass it without a second glance. Just another shortcut, like hundreds in the castle. But if you step onto it past midnight, something changes. The steps spiral down and down, tighter and darker with each turn. No windows, no torches, just your footsteps and the sound of your breath. And then it loops. You descend 20 steps, then 20 more, then the same 20 again. The carvings on the stone repeat. A small crack on the wall shows up again. You're walking in circles, but the stairs keep going. One second year claimed he spent 4 hours on the staircase before it released him. He aged overnight, his eyes sunken, his skin pale. Another girl screamed for help until her voice gave out. She was found sleeping on the 7th floor, with pebbles in her shoes and a scratch on her ankle she didn't remember getting. Some believe it's a trap set by the castle itself, a test of patience or humility. Others think the staircase is a pocket of time, looping endlessly until the person climbing it lets go of something they're clinging to. One boy said he escaped only after tossing his broomstick behind him. Another claimed it ended when he whispered, "I'm not ready." Now, students don't use it. The portrait that guards it yawns when asked and says, "If you step in too deep, don't look back, because if the staircase starts to change, it may not be the stairs that are looping. It might be you." The student who dug too deep. He thought he was being clever. A third-year Hufflepuff who adored shortcuts and hated cold stone floors. One day, while helping the house elves near the kitchens, he noticed the dirt behind a loose tile was unusually soft, damp, like it had recently been turned. He joked about it, said he could dig his own tunnel straight to herbology and never have to fight staircases again. His friends laughed until he actually brought a shovel to class. That night, he began to dig. At first, it was harmless. A shallow burrow under a set of unused pipes, shielded by an old barrel. But the soil got looser the deeper he went. Warmer. Somehow. He said it was probably geothermal. Then he found bones. Not human. Not animal. Twisted things. Spines with no bodies. Ribs that spiraled. He brought one to herbology, claiming he'd discovered a root fossil. The professor confiscated it. He dug faster after that. His friends noticed he looked tired. Dirt in his hair. Dark circles under his eyes. He stopped going to class. Said the tunnel whispered when it rained. One morning, the opening was gone. The tiles sealed. No loose dirt. No sign he'd ever been there. They say a patch of hallway near the kitchens feels off now, slightly tilted. If you walk slowly, you can hear something hollow beneath your feet. Some believe he dug into something ancient, something not meant to be unearthed. Others whisper that he's still down there, still digging, or worse, being dug up. No one jokes about tunnels anymore. The badger that guards a secret. In the Hufflepuff common room, there's a large tapestry near the fireplace. Golden threads, black wool, and a proud badger standing guard over a field of wildflowers. Most students see it as decoration, but every few years, someone swears the badger moved. Not just shifted, but turned its head, looked at them, blinked. The first student to report it was a fifth-year prefect known for her honesty. She said the tapestry badger locked eyes with her after she told a small lie to her roommate, something silly, about borrowing a quill. Later that night, she heard soft padding behind her in the hallway, turned around. Nothing. The next day, her quill was gone. Then her ink, her notes, one by one, her borrowed things disappeared until she confessed and apologized. Only then did her things reappear in a neat stack at the foot of her bed. Others began to test the rumor, whispered secrets, told lies in front of the tapestry. Some noticed their personal items rearranged. Others found badger-shaped footprints in spilled flour or ink. One boy lied to a teacher about cheating on a test. That night, The badger on the tapestry bared its teeth. The next morning, his test parchment had melted into gold dust. Now, Hufflepuffs treat the tapestry with quiet respect. Some even leave offerings, buttons, flower petals, polished pebbles. No one knows what secret it guards or why it watches. But it's said the badger doesn't protect treasure. It protects truth. The disappearing herbology apprentice. He was a 6th-year Hufflepuff with a green thumb so strong. The plants in Greenhouse 3 leaned toward him when he entered. Professor Sprout adored him. He stayed after class, watered every bed, knew the Latin names of magical flora no one else had ever heard of. Then he started working on something new. A hybrid, a cross between a night bloom vine and a whistling thorn. It had no name. He kept it hidden behind a curtain, said it wasn't ready. One evening, he didn't show up for dinner. They searched. The greenhouses were locked. His wand was still on his desk. His journal, half-written, ended mid-sentence. It's finally listening back. Professor Sprout found a patch of soil in Greenhouse 4 that hadn't been there before. Rich, freshly turned, but no one remembered planting anything. And from that soil, a single stem, pale green, thorned, humming softly. They sealed off the greenhouse, said it was under maintenance, but students peek through the glass. The plant has grown. Some say it moves when watched, that it pulses when you speak. One girl claimed to hear humming in return. Same tone, same key. They believe the apprentice didn't disappear. They believe the plant absorbed him. Now, a single vine coils gently around the bench he used to sit on, like it's waiting for someone to finish the conversation. The midnight laugh in the cellars. The Hogwarts cellars are vast and winding, stocked with barrels, bottles, and preserved ingredients for feasts. Hufflepuffs pass them often, on the way to the kitchens. And sometimes, around midnight, they hear laughter. Not evil laughter, not mad, just joyous. Muffled chuckles echoing through stone corridors, like a party you weren't invited to. At first, students thought it was Peeves, but the voice was too low, too warm. A group of third years decided to follow the sound one night. They brought lanterns, snuck past the kitchens, and ventured deep into the cellars. They never found the source, but they came back pale. One of them whispered that the hallway behind the wine barrels had shifted, just slightly, that the laughter had turned into words, and that the words said, "We remember you. Legend has it, The laughter belongs to the original Hufflepuffs, students who used to sneak down for midnight picnics and hid their best jokes behind bricks. That part of their joy seeped into the walls. Others say it's older, that the cellars are built atop something from before the school itself, a communal space, a place of gathering, now buried, but still echoing. One night a year, a lantern is found burning near the barrels, unlit by students or staff, always facing a wall, always flickering with shadows that don't match the torchlight. Some students leave snacks behind, just in case the laughter returns. And sometimes it does. The love potion that went wrong. It started, as many disasters do, with a trip to Hogsmeade. A soft-spoken Hufflepuff, kind, awkward, hopelessly in love, visited Zonko's for candy, but left with something else, a tiny glass vial of swirling pink liquid. Just a few drops, the label said. Enough to make hearts flutter. They slipped it into a batch of cupcakes, meant for one person. A quiet gesture, sweet, slightly desperate. But the cupcakes ended up on the common table. Everyone in the Hufflepuff common room ate one. It wasn't instant. At first, just laughter, lingering stares. Then chaos. Students clung to each other, confessed crushes, wept over imaginary heartbreaks. One boy proposed to a mop. A girl tried to marry a portrait of Helga Hufflepuff. Then came the side effects. Dizziness, nausea, fainting spells. Madame Pumphrey was called. The culprit confessed before being asked. The vial had been improperly brewed, too potent, no reversal. For hours, the common room pulsed with emotional magic. The walls glowed pink. Even the badger-shaped rug started humming old love songs. The next day, Professor Sprout issued a new rule. No unsupervised potions from Hogsmeade. Ever. And though the love spell faded, strange echoes linger. Sometimes, students find notes tucked in their books, love letters with no sender. A few have reported hearing faint violin music when they sit near the fireplace. And once, a cupcake appeared on a windowsill, fresh, warm, untouched. No one dared eat it. And the cursed cup in the trophy room. Tucked away on the bottom shelf of the trophy room sits an old, tarnished Quidditch cup. It's small, dented, and barely legible, but it bears the Hufflepuff crest, dated over a century ago. No one pays much attention to it, until someone tries to polish it. A student once volunteered to clean the entire room as a detention assignment. He was cheerful about it, until he touched the cup. The moment he rubbed the cloth over its surface, he screamed, dropped it, and fled. He wouldn't speak for days. When he finally did, he claimed he'd seen everyone he loved turn away from him, that the reflection in the cup wasn't his, but a twisted version, cold, unloved, forgotten. Another student tried years later, thinking it was a prank. She fainted within seconds. Her friend said the cup glowed faintly, and for just a moment, whispered something. Now, it's an unspoken rule. No one touches the Hufflepuff cup. Professors never mention it. Filch walks around it. Even ghosts float a little higher when passing by. Some say the cup belonged to a player who cursed it after being benched for the final game. Others think it was enchanted by accident, infused with the heartbreak of someone who gave everything for their house and was still forgotten. A few students claim that late at night, the cup weeps. That if you listen closely, you can hear it mourn. And once a year, on the anniversary of the lost match, it shines like gold for just a minute, then fades. No one knows how to lift the curse, but no one really wants to try. The room that smells like home. It appears when you're lost, not in the literal sense, but emotionally, tired, drained, on the edge of tears and needing something you can't name. Students have stumbled upon it while wandering the hallways near the kitchens, often at night. A plain wooden door, slightly cracked, warm light glowing from within. They step inside, and the smell hits them. Freshly baked bread, vanilla, lemon balm. Sometimes it smells like their grandmother's attic. Sometimes like a childhood bedroom. Always. It's comforting. The room itself is simple. An armchair, a low table, and a single candle burning steadily. There are no portraits, no books, just warmth. You sit, and time slows. One Hufflepuff said she sat there for what felt like 10 minutes, but when she returned, it had been 3 hours. Another found a note on the table, written in her own handwriting. You're going to be okay. No one has found the room twice. Some believe it's a manifestation of Helga Hufflepuff's magic, an echo of her care for her students. Others think it's a room of requirement for the soul. It appears when you don't know what to ask for. But the castle does. One student tried to find it again by retracing their steps. All they found was a blank stone wall, faintly warm to the touch. Now, students speak of it in hushed tones, not as a rumor, but as a hope. because Hogwarts may be old and wild and sometimes cruel, but it remembers when you need to feel loved. The garden that grows itself. Behind Greenhouse 7, past a patch of thorny shrubs no one remembers planting, there's a hidden garden, overgrown, unkempt, and yet oddly organized. The plants grow in circles. Vines loop around empty air. Wildflowers form the shape of footprints. And in the center, a ring of blossoms that blooms year-round, even under snow. No one planted it. Professor Sprout denies tending it. But the garden thrives, silently, stubbornly, with a purpose no one fully understands. Hufflepuff students sometimes find themselves drawn there, especially after loss, a failed exam, a heartbreak, a death. One girl visited after her owl passed. The next day, a sprig of golden hawthorn bloomed in the middle of the circle, her owl's favorite perch. Another student claimed the garden whispered to him, not in words, but memories. He left with dirt on his shoes and a sudden clarity about something he'd buried deep. Some say the garden is alive, not sentient, but soulful, that each bloom represents a student who's passed through Hogwarts, leaving a piece of themselves behind. Others believe it's older, a remnant of Helga Hufflepuff's original gardens, untouched by time and still fed by magic meant for healing. Students don't disturb it. They sit, they cry, they breathe. And when they leave, they often find something blooming behind them. Something new, something gentle, something that wasn't there before. The ghost in the hearth. The Hufflepuff house ghost doesn't have a name. He appears only in winter, and only by the fireplace. A pale figure, bundled in a cloak too big for his body, with eyes that shimmer like candlelight behind frost. He hums, not haunting melodies, not dirges, but lullabies, old, wordless tunes that tug at memories you can't quite place. Students first reported him decades ago, always during blizzards, always when someone was alone. One girl, stuck inside with a cold, said the ghost sat by her bed and hummed her to sleep. When she woke, her fever had broken. Another student wrote that the ghost never speaks, but when he nodded at her during her OWL's panic, she suddenly remembered everything she had forgotten. He never shows up in the portraits. The fat friar says he doesn't know him. And yet, he's real. Some believe he was a student who never left, not because he died, but because he stayed. chose to linger in the warmest corner of the castle and watch over the ones who needed comfort. Others think he's older, a fragment of the warmth Helga left behind, given form by generations of gentle hearts. Students sometimes hum back. Those who do report vivid dreams of snow-covered fields, warm hearths, and voices long gone saying, "It's all right now." The ghost never lingers past winter, but every spring, someone finds a single thread from his cloak near the fireplace. Always gold, always warm. At the wand that refused a duel, the wand sat in the relic drawer, at the back of the Hufflepuff common room, a humble bit of carved oak, snapped clean through the middle. Most students think it's a broken training wand, but older Hufflepuffs know better. It once belonged to a student named Jonah Flint, gentle, bright, always smiling. He never won duels, never sought praise, but was respected all the same. One day, a Slytherin challenged him, loud, public, mean. Everyone expected Jonah to decline, but he didn't. He stepped onto the dueling platform, wand in hand, face pale. The Slytherin raised his wand first, and Jonah raised his too. But nothing happened. Instead, his wand snapped in his hand. No spell, no impact, just a clean, loud break, as though the wood itself had said no. He bowed and left. Later, Professor Flitwick examined the wand. There was no flaw, no curse, just an unnatural break, one caused by magical resistance from within. The duel had been unbalanced, wrong, and the wand had refused. Since then, the broken wand remains as a symbol, not of cowardice, but of conscience, that sometimes bravery is in restraint, that Hufflepuff magic doesn't answer to pride or provocation. Some students claim to hear a hum from the drawer when they're tempted to lash out. Others say the wand glows faintly if you stand near it in anger. No one has ever tried to repair it, and no one dares throw it away. The riddle that drove her mad. They say it happened decades ago, though no one can agree on the exact year. A Ravenclaw girl, brilliant, sharp, always the first to raise her hand in class, was returning late to the tower after an astronomy lesson ran long. She stood before the eagle-shaped door knocker, as Ravenclaws always do, and waited for the riddle. That night, the riddle was particularly odd. What is the only question you can never answer yes to? She smiled. It was easy. Are you asleep? But instead of opening, the door paused, then offered another. And if all truths are versions of lies, which one is real? She answered again, then again. The riddles kept coming, each more abstract, more impossible than the last. Some say she answered 20, some say more. But the tower never opened. Other students eventually found her curled at the base of the door, murmuring riddles to herself, her hands scribbling invisible answers onto the stone floor. Professors took her to the hospital wing, but her mind was gone, trapped in a spiral of questions she could no longer distinguish from thought. Rumors say she's still alive, cared for somewhere deep in the castle, and still trying to answer one final riddle no one else has heard. Others whisper that the tower had, in that moment, tested her for something beyond intelligence, that she'd answered too well, that she'd unlocked a riddle not meant to be solved, and for it, the door showed her what lay beyond this reality. Some say the eagle door still gives that riddle to students, but only to those who are too clever for their own good. The book that writes back, deep in the restricted section of the library, where the dust is thick and the air is colder than it should be, there's a book that doesn't have a title. No author. Just a black leather cover and blank pages that glow faintly when moonlight touches them. Students who've stumbled across it claim the book doesn't stay in one place. 1 week. It's behind a wall of locked tomes. The next, it's sitting plain as day on a reading table until Madame Pince blinks and it's gone again. They say if you ask it a question, any question, from your exam topics to the meaning of death, it answers. But not in words, in ink that seeps up through the page, slow as honey, smelling faintly of burnt feathers and something metallic. One student asked how to get perfect grades. The book wrote back a single word: betray. Another asked how to become invisible. The reply came in a riddle that ended with, "But do you want to disappear completely?" Some say it's not just ink, that the book responds using pieces of your thoughts, pulled directly from your mind, that the more questions you ask, the less of yourself remains, until eventually your name appears written on the first page, and the rest of the pages go blank once more. The book has never been checked out. It can't be removed from the library, but every so often, someone finds it, and the urge to ask just one thing becomes too much to resist. And when you do, the book always answers, whether you're ready or not. The mirror that shows alternate selves. Behind a crooked bookshelf in the astronomy wing, There's a mirror hidden in plain sight. No frame, no plaque, just a long shard of glass, propped upright against the wall, half covered by an old tapestry of stars. To most, it looks broken, just another forgotten relic. But to some Ravenclaws, it shows something different, who angered not the giant, them, but other versions of them. Ones with different robes, different faces. One student saw herself with dark hair instead of blonde, wearing green Slytherin colors and laughing beside people she's never met. Another saw himself older, scarred, cold-eyed, teaching a class that doesn't exist. The mirror doesn't distort. It reflects what could have been. Some claim it reveals to you parallel timelines, that with every choice we make, another version of us branches off into something else. The mirror doesn't just show possibilities, it shows realities, versions of yourself walking around in other worlds. But it's not just a window. Students who stare too long into it begin to change. They pick up habits they never had. They speak with accents that aren't theirs. One girl began calling her friends by the wrong names, convinced they were someone else. Eventually, the staff sealed off the passage leading to the mirror. But Ravenclaws, ever curious, always find ways back. And when they do, they never look at themselves the same way again. Because once you see who else you could be, you start to wonder if you're the wrong version. The girl who floated away. She was quiet, brilliant. A third year who always sat at the top of the astronomy tower during free periods, sketching star charts no professor had taught yet. She claimed the stars spoke to her, not in words, but in feelings, pulses, urges. One day, she found a half-burned scroll tucked inside an ancient book in the restricted section. It detailed an experimental anti-gravity charm, one so old it predated Hogwarts itself. She copied it in perfect ink, and the next night, under a sky that shimmered violet with northern lights, she climbed to the very edge of the astronomy tower and cast it. At first, nothing happened. Then her shoes lifted off the stone, slowly. Then her robes, then her hands. She smiled and waved at the stunned first year who witnessed it all. They say she drifted upward, calm, almost serene, as if the sky had simply come to reclaim her, past the tower's spires, past the clouds, until she became a dot, then a shimmer, then nothing. The ministry called it a tragic accident. Professor Flitwick called it unauthorized spell work. But the stars that night flickered. Some students say she didn't disappear. She ascended, that she's still out there, orbiting above, just out of sight. And if you stand on the tower at midnight on the anniversary of her vanishing, you can hear her humming, a soft tune carried on the wind. And if you hum back, the air beneath your feet grows lighter. The door that counts your lies. It's a door most people pass by without noticing, tucked in a rarely used corridor off the west tower, where the stone grows mossy and the windows are always misted. But Ravenclaws know it. They whisper about it in between classes, daring each other to try. There's no handle, no lock, just a bronze plate at its center, engraved with a single instruction. Speak. Only truth will open. When you speak aloud to the door, nothing happens at first. But then, if you've lied, even slightly, a glowing number appears above your head. One student said, "I'm not afraid." The number 1 lit up. Another claimed, "I didn't break the curfew." The number rose to 3. It keeps count of every lie you've told in your life. The more you lie while standing there, the higher the number climbs. A 7th year reportedly screamed when the number hit 92, refusing to say what it meant. But here's the disturbing part. Even if you stand there in silence, the number appears. Quiet students with nothing to say have still seen. Seven. Even if they hadn't said a word. Some think the door doesn't count spoken lies. It counts the lies you've told yourself. Others believe it reads your intent, weighing your honesty, not just in speech, but in spirit. No one has ever opened the door. A few have tried to speak only truth, pouring out confessions, secrets, even tears. But the door never budged. And once you've seen your number, it stays with you. Students have caught glimpses of it again, reflected in windows, shining faintly in candlelight. The door doesn't judge. It just counts. The ghost who tutors for a price. He's not listed among Hogwarts' known ghosts. He's not a house ghost, nor a professor in history books, but late at night, in the upper floors of the Ravenclaw Tower, students have reported a translucent man drifting silently through the reading rooms. He doesn't float like other ghosts. He walks, slow, deliberate, with parchment trailing behind him, quill tucked behind one ear. He never introduces himself. He just appears beside you when you're studying and quietly asks, "Ed, would you like the answer?" His knowledge is uncanny, ancient runes, advanced arithmancy, wand theory from lost eras. He explains it all with perfect clarity. Students say listening to him is like suddenly remembering something you never learned. You write it down, and it's always correct. But the ghost always asks for something in return. A secret. Not a silly one. Not something you'd admit at breakfast. It has to be something you've never said aloud. Something real. Some hesitated. He vanished. Others gave up secrets willingly and never saw him again. But a few became obsessed. They kept going back, offering more and more. Some say the ghost began to remember the secrets, whispering them back at odd times. Did you tell your sister? Have you apologized yet? You lied about the wand duel, didn't you? One girl swore she saw her own secret scrawled on the wall of the girls' lavatory a week after telling it. No one knows who he was in life. Some believe he was a Ravenclaw student who cheated his way through school by gathering truths from others. And now, in death, continues his bargain. But one thing's clear. He never forgets what you say. The hourglass of memory, hidden somewhere in the tower, no one's quite sure where, lies a small, cracked hourglass on a pedestal of black stone. It's never in the same place twice. Students say it appears only when you're alone, and only when you're carrying a memory that hurts. The sand inside runs backward. Pale blue grains swirl upward instead of down. And at the base, carved in runes older than Hogwarts itself, is a single line. What would you give to forget? No spell protects it. No curse surrounds it. All it takes is a touch, your fingertip against the glass, and you feel it, that weight in your chest, that ache in your mind, lifting. You don't choose the memory. The hourglass does. A Ravenclaw boy once touched it after failing his OWWL. He later forgot the face of his mother, who had died the year before. Another student, grieving a heartbreak, found that she no longer remembered the name of the person she had loved. The memories vanish completely. No trace, no echo. Professors can't retrieve them, not even with veritaserum or legilimency. They're simply gone. But here's the strange thing. The hourglass keeps those memories. If you listen closely, you can hear them swirling in the sand. Soft voices, laughter, cries, the echo of lives lived. And the more it's used, the faster the sand rises. Some say when the hourglass reaches the top, it will spill. and every memory ever stolen will flood back out into the world, into anyone nearby. So if you ever see it, sitting in a hallway, or under a desk, or between two books that shouldn't be there, ask yourself, would you really give something away just to feel nothing at all? The window that shows the future. There's a window at the very top of Ravenclaw Tower, higher than the dormitories, past even the owl alcoves. It's small, round like a telescope lens, framed in copper, and nearly invisible unless the moon hits it just right. Most students pass it without a second glance, but the few who have stood before it at the stroke of 2 a.m. say something is different. The sky beyond it doesn't match the sky outside. Stars blink in unfamiliar constellations. The moon waxes when it should wane. And sometimes, the view shows weather that hasn't arrived yet. Lightning striking a tree that's still whole. Snow on the grounds, while the castle below sweats in autumn heat. One Ravenclaw, a 6th-year seer, stared into the window, night after night. She kept a journal, recording the differences, cross-referencing with the actual weather in the following days. Her predictions became eerily accurate. Her divination professor grew suspicious, until the girl went missing mid-term. All that remained was her open notebook by the window, its last entry scrawled hastily. Not showing time anymore. It's showing choices. The glass, they say, doesn't just show what will happen. It shows what could happen. Splintering timelines, parallel futures, branching fates. The longer you look, the more of yourself is pulled in. Some students claim to have seen themselves through the glass. Older, injured, triumphant, or not at all. There are whispers that the window is a relic from Rowena Ravenclaw herself, an experiment in temporal divination gone awry. Others believe it's not a window at all, but an eye, watching, choosing. If you find it, look quickly, but never long, because the future can't be unseen. And some reflections aren't meant for now. The room that rearranges theories. Every Ravenclaw knows the top floor study room with the crooked blue door. It's popular during exam season, always full of ink-stained fingers, floating candles, and parchment everywhere. But there's something odd about the room, and it always begins the same way. You fall asleep while studying. Not unusual. But when you wake up, your notes are different, neater, more insightful. The essay you struggled with for hours has been rewritten in your handwriting, but with arguments you don't remember forming. It's not just small edits. It's entire pages, new theorems, conclusions you hadn't considered, quotes from books you've never read. At first, students assume they worked in a sleep-deprived haze. But then the pattern appears. The thoughts are always correct, original, even brilliant. Professors start praising the clarity. Some students build their academic reputations off these altered works. Then the side effects creep in. One boy began hearing his essay, read back to him, whispered from the corners of the room. Another found his own name, signed beneath a theory, published in a wizarding journal, though he never submitted it. A girl tried to rewrite her improved paper from memory, and found she couldn't. Her original ideas were gone. Some believe the room is sentient, that it absorbs your intent, your frustration, and rewrites your work the way it wants to, that it's not helping you, it's using you as a conduit to speak. Ravenclaws still use the room. Of course they do. Curiosity wins. But they leave their essays unsigned now, just in case something else is writing them. The student who solved the wrong puzzle. He was a puzzle prodigy, obsessed with riddles, ciphers, anything that required decoding. Every day after class, he'd linger by the Ravenclaw staircase banisters, tracing his fingers over the swirling carvings etched deep into the wood. He believed the founder had left a message, a final riddle no one had yet solved. And then, one day, he cracked it. He didn't tell anyone what it said, just smiled, climbed the last step of the spiral staircase, and reached for a symbol carved at eye level, a tiny open eye surrounded by 7 stars. As soon as he touched it, he vanished. Not disapparated, not teleported. Vanished. No sound, no light, just gone. Professors investigated. Of course, the banister was examined, scanned, even magically duplicated, but no one else could find the symbol again. Not ever. His friends were questioned, but no one knew what the final clue had been. His trunk remained packed. His wand sat untouched on his nightstand. Some say he solved something he wasn't meant to, unlocked a door not into a room, but into another layer of the castle, a pocket between worlds, or a time bubble that hasn't caught up with us yet. Others whisper that Ravenclaw Tower rewards brilliance. But if you go too far, see too clearly, you don't ascend. You disappear. Every now and then, a new student starts tracing those same carvings on the banister. The professors watch them closely, not to stop them, just to see if the tower is ready to offer the riddle again Because whatever that student touched, it wasn't the end of the puzzle. It was the beginning. The student who angered the giant squid. It started, as most bad ideas do, with a dare. A fourth-year Slytherin student, cocky, brilliant, and always trying to impress, thought it would be funny to prank the giant squid. He enchanted a bottle of squid ink with a jinx that made it explode in water, and then tossed it into the black lake from the Slytherin common room window. Just beneath the surface. The squid surfaced within seconds, thrashing. A wave crashed so hard against the window that the glass shimmered. For a moment, students thought it might break. But the squid didn't attack. It just stared through the water, unblinking. And then it vanished. The next week, the boy's wand snapped during charms class, right in half, unprovoked. His shoes never stayed dry, no matter the weather. Every time he looked out the common room window, something swam past in the deep, watching him. Eventually, he transferred out of Hogwarts, or so they say. But the giant squid's behavior changed. It no longer waved at boats or let students dangle toast above the water for it to sniff. Some claim it still helps Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors when they fall in. But Slytherins? It ignores them completely. All except one. One first-year girl reported being yanked underwater by a tentacle after touching the glass with her palm. She surfaced a minute later, gasping, muttering something about a debt not yet paid. Now, Slytherins avoid teasing the squid. Some press their palms to the window and whisper apologies. Others just never sit near it again. Because whatever that student awoke in the lake, it hasn't gone back to sleep. The boy who vanished beneath the dungeons. It was late winter when the floor gave way. A first-year Slytherin was rushing to potions, cloak flapping, when he stepped onto a flagstone that had been loose for decades. Except that day, it wasn't just loose. It crumbled with a sound like tearing parchment. He fell straight through the floor. His classmates screamed. Professor Snape arrived in seconds, but when they peered down, there was nothing. Just darkness. No scream, no sound, no echo. They searched. Of course, spells were cast. Aurors were called. Even the headmaster himself scoured the area. Nothing. The floor was repaired, but no one ever walked that path alone again. The boy's name was quietly removed from the attendance logs. His things were packed. His wand remained in his bedside drawer, unclaimed. Years later, a Slytherin girl dropped her quill in the same hallway. As she bent to pick it up, she heard a whisper from below. "Don't follow the lanterns." There were no lanterns there. Other students began reporting similar things. Cold spots, strange dripping noises from the stone. A faint hum only Slytherins seemed to hear. Once, someone dropped a stone down the crack and never heard it hit bottom. Some say the boy fell into an abandoned part of the castle, forgotten, cursed, a level beneath the dungeons that even the founders sealed away. Others believe the castle simply took him, as it occasionally does, feeding on youth and magic. But everyone agrees. The hallway beneath the potions classroom has one more shadow than it should. Tom Riddle's unfinished ritual. Before he was Voldemort, he was just a boy in the dungeons, brilliant, charming, and terrifyingly curious. He often sat by the Slytherin common room's fireplace, eyes locked on the green flames, scribbling in a journal no one ever saw. Sometimes he murmured in Parseltongue, though he denied it when others heard. Sometimes he laughed at nothing. One night, long after curfew, 3 students woke to find him drawing runes into the floor. Ancient, complex, pulsating faintly with red light. He didn't stop when they entered, didn't even look up, just said, "You'll thank me when it's done." But whatever he was trying to summon, or control, was interrupted. Dumbledore found him that night and escorted him out. The next day, the runes were gone, scrubbed clean, but the rug in front of the fireplace never quite sat flat again. Since then, strange things happen there. Books vanish and reappear, open to odd pages. Candles flicker green, even when there's no wind. One girl fainted after sitting too long on the rug, muttering about red stars in the walls. Some think Tom Riddle was attempting a soul-splitting ritual, before Horcruxes were even part of his plan. Others believe it was something older, a Slytherin magic no one has spoken of in centuries. Whatever he started, he didn't finish it, and the spell remains beneath the rug, waiting for someone clever and foolish enough to continue it. The green-eyed girl in the mirror. The dungeon mirrors are old, not dusty, enchanted to stay clean, but old in a way that seems to remember you. There's one across from the Slytherin girls' lavatory that students avoid after dark, not because it's cracked, not because it flickers, but because sometimes she appears. A girl with green eyes. Not emerald, not soft, but sharp, piercing, almost serpent-like. Her hair is dark, wet-looking, like she's just come from the lake. She smiles too slowly, tilts her head like she's listening. Students who see her say she looks just like them. At first, then things change. The reflection moves a second too late, smiles when the real student doesn't, mouths words that aren't being spoken aloud. One girl reached out to touch the glass. Her reflection didn't. It stared, wide-eyed, hungry, until she ran. Another student claimed the girl spoke. You could be better. I can show you how. It's always the same. Promises of power, of clarity, of shedding fear, of becoming who you were meant to be. Some students swear they walked away, only to return later and find themselves already there, inside the mirror, mouthing something silent and frantic. A few have broken the mirror. The glass heals overnight. The girl always returns. No professor acknowledges her. No curse-breaking spell removes her. The most unsettling theory? She's not a ghost or spell. She's a version of you, one that took a different path, in a world not far enough from this one. And one day, she might not ask to trade places. She might just step through. The pet basilisk theory. Everyone knows the story of the Chamber of Secrets. The basilisk, the student turned murderer. But Slytherins whisper another version, one that the rest of the school would rather not believe. The basilisk Tom Riddle used wasn't the only one. The theory is simple. Slytherin didn't build the chamber to house a monster. He built it to breed them. The tunnel system beneath the school is vast, winding, and partially unexplored. The idea that one creature lived there for centuries, unnoticed, is laughable to some. What's more likely, they argue, is that the basilisk had offspring, smaller, quieter, obedient, pets. One Slytherin claimed to hear hissing in the pipes late at night, not menacing, but conversational. Another found a single, massive scale under her bed, glowing faintly green. They say the basilisk answered to Parseltongue not because of magic, but because it had been trained, conditioned, a legacy handed down through generations of Slytherins. And if Tom Riddle found one, he may have left behind more. Years after the chamber was reopened, a group of students exploring the far end of the dungeons found a stone wall with a carving of a serpent they couldn't identify. When one of them whispered in Parseltongue as a joke, the wall grew warm, then cold, then silent. They never found that passage again. But every now and then, pipes in the Slytherin dormitories rattle for no reason, and the mirrors fog. From the inside, The basilisk may be dead, but the bloodline, still slithering. The unopened door, with the bleeding lock. At the end of the lowest dungeon corridor, a hallway students aren't supposed to explore, there's a door unlike the others. No nameplate, no enchantments, just a rusted iron lock, old and thick, with a strange reddish stain trailing down the handle. Some say it was once a storage room. Others claim it was part of a secret ritual chamber used during the earliest days of the school. The truth? No one knows, because no one has ever opened it. Every few years, a brave or foolish Slytherin tries. Unlocking spells don't work. Physical keys disintegrate when inserted. One student once jammed the handle with a crowbar and ended up in the hospital wing with their hand frozen stiff and marked with blisters in the shape of teeth. But the most disturbing part, when you touch the lock, your finger comes back wet, with what looks and smells like blood. No matter how many times the door is cleaned, the bleeding returns. One seventh year claimed she pressed her ear to the wood and heard something breathing, slow, steady, deliberate. Another said the lock whispered their name. A third swore they saw a thin sliver of light appear beneath the door during a thunderstorm, though there's no source of light behind it. The professors don't speak about the door. House elves refuse to clean that corridor. And Peeves, who mocks everything, refuses to float near it at all. There's a theory it leads somewhere deeper than the dungeons, somewhere Hogwarts itself doesn't want people to remember. A room sealed not with magic, but with guilt. And if that door ever opens again, whatever bleeds from the lock may not be the only thing that comes out. The forgotten duel that shook the house. It was never officially recorded. No mention in Hogwarts history. No note in the Slytherin archives. But the 7th years at the time remember. 2 Slytherins, both top of their year, both fiercely ambitious, vanished from the dormitories one stormy night. Hours later, only one returned. He didn't speak, not to professors, not to friends. His robes were burned at the edges. His wand was missing. Some say it was a love triangle. Others think it was a power struggle over who would become head boy. The truth remains buried, because no one dares ask him. What is known? The Slytherin common room was ice cold for 3 days after. The candles wouldn't light properly, and the wall opposite the fireplace developed a thin, branching crack like a spider web, one that never fully repaired. One night, a first year wandered into the room late, and saw the surviving student whispering into that crack. He turned slowly, smiled, and said, "It listens, you know, it remembers." Since then, strange things happen near that wall. Spells misfire, reflections distort. If you stand too close and speak, your voice echoes back with a second delay, just long enough to be unsettling. Some believe the duel created a magical scar, something so charged with hatred and fear it imprinted onto the stone itself. Others think the student who returned left something behind, or brought something back. No one ever found the other boy. But every few years, a Slytherin dreams of him, wandless, wordless, waiting. The curse beneath the shrieking shack. Everyone knows the shrieking shack is haunted. That's the official line. But Slytherins have their own version of the tale. One that doesn't involve werewolves or fake screams. Years ago, a daring fifth-year Slytherin boy snuck out of the castle on a bet. Spend one night in the shrieking shack, they said. Make it until sunrise, and you'll earn house bragging rights for a decade. He went in at dusk, came back at dawn. But something was different. He didn't speak at breakfast, or lunch, or dinner. His eyes darted at every sound. When asked what happened, he whispered, "It speaks in the floor." The professors thought he'd gone mad, but he wasn't violent, just quiet, until he tried to cast a spell, and nothing came out. His wand worked. The magic was there, but his voice, his will, wouldn't obey. Every spell required a whisper. Shouted incantations failed. Loud ones fizzled. But if he whispered, the spells surged with power. It terrified him. He eventually left school, but the shack has never been the same. A few students have visited during Hogsmeade weekends and claim the floorboards beneath the attic pulse faintly if you sit in silence. One girl said she placed her hand on the wood and heard voices, chanting, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat in another language. Whatever happened to that student, whatever curse lingers in that building, it's changed how some Slytherins view the shack. It's not haunted. It's bound. And it doesn't want visitors. It wants followers. The girl who talked to the lake. She was strange, even for a Slytherin. Quiet, observant, always sitting at the edge of the great lake with her journal in hand. Most assumed she was writing poetry or sketching mermaids. But those who got close enough to hear her realized she wasn't writing. She was listening. She spoke softly, lips barely moving. Sometimes she'd hum, Sometimes she'd nod. Once, she tilted her head as if someone had just told her a joke. When asked, she smiled and said, "The lake is old. It remembers more than you." No one took her seriously until things began to happen. She always knew when it would rain. She warned a student not to board a boat one morning, and it capsized an hour later. Her spells became more fluid, her wand movements mimicking waves and currents. Then she vanished. One evening, she walked down to the edge of the lake, placed her wand and journal on a flat stone, and stepped into the water. She didn't sink. She didn't float. She simply dissolved, like mist, into the waves. Some say the mer people took her. Others believe she found something older than them, a presence that sleeps beneath the silt and stirs only when called respectfully. To this day, her journal remains dry. Students have tried to open it, but the pages remain blank. Unless you sit by the water, alone, and listen. Sometimes, ink appears for just a moment, just long enough to write back. The midnight markings on the common room floor. Every full moon, just past midnight, something happens to the floor of the Slytherin common room. The rug in front of the fireplace curls upward. No breeze, no feet. Just a slow, deliberate pull. And underneath it, runes. Strange ones. Not Latin, not gobbledygook. Something older, flowing, circular, almost reptilian. They glow faintly, green and gold, and then fade as the moon passes its peak. No spell can erase them. No charm can track them. Professors dismiss it as student mischief. But the older students know better. One 7th year spent a full term documenting the runes. Every full moon, he copied them down, trying to translate. Then one morning, he left his parchment on his desk and walked into the lake. His body was found 2 days later, his mouth full of water, but his lungs untouched, like he'd breathed it. Some think the markings are Slytherin's true legacy. Not the chamber, not the bloodlines, but a language older than parcel tongue, a magical signature buried in the castle stone, revealing itself only when the stars align. Others say it's a countdown, that each time the runes appear, they change slightly. And when the final set is complete, something will be summoned. The rug still moves, every full moon. No one dares sit there past midnight, because if the runes want to be seen, they're almost done waiting.